Buying a new car isn't cheap these days, and if you need to take out a loan, it will cost you even more. So making the right choice matters.
More and more drivers are reaching the same point with new cars. They are tired of them. Tired of paying more and getting less. Tired of features they never asked for. Tired of cheap-feeling interiors, touch controls that make everything harder, and repair bills that feel completely out of proportion to the problem. That is why this issue is hitting so hard right now. It is not just one brand. It is not just one bad model. It is the feeling that the whole industry stopped building cars for people who actually plan to keep them. And once you see why this keeps happening, you start to understand why so many smart buyers are turning back to older cars. Premium illusion. One of the biggest mistakes a buyer can make today is assuming price and quality still move together the way they used to. Years ago, paying more often meant heavier doors, thicker seats, sturdier switchgear, better sound insulation, and parts that felt like they were built with some margin in them. Today, paying more often gets you a larger screen, a cleaner dashboard, more lighting strips, more sensors, more software, and a feature list long enough to justify a painful monthly payment. That can look impressive. It can also hide a lot of cheap decisions. Walk through a dealer lot and many modern cabins look wonderful at first glance. The stitching is there, the metallic trim is there, the giant display is there, the touch points look modern. The car gives you that first hit feeling that says this must be premium. Then 6 months pass, maybe a year. The piano black plastic around the shifter is already scratched. The touch slider for the climate control is annoying at night. The glossy panel around the screen collects dust and fingerprints. The door panel that looked rich in the brochure sounds hollow when you tap it. The seat cushion softens faster than you expected. Nothing has fully broken, but the car no longer feels expensive in a good way. It feels expensive in a temporary way. That difference matters. A lot of modern vehicles are very good at showroom quality. They are very good at looking fresh, feeling current, and helping a salesperson explain why this trim costs more than the one next to it. But long-term quality is a different thing. Long-term quality is how the seat holds its shape after years of getting in and out. It is whether the steering wheel buttons still click cleanly after daily use. It is whether the headliner stays tight, the armrest stays firm, the paint resists chips, and the trim does not buzz over rough roads. That is why so many owners feel confused. They spent more money, yet the car often feels less substantial than something older and cheaper. It's because a lot of what they paid for was not strength, it was presentation. The industry has become extremely good at selling the feeling of quality without always delivering the deeper kind that lasts. And once you realize that, the next question becomes hard to avoid. If the visible parts are already more fragile than they should be, what is going on underneath? That is where the real trouble starts, because the same short-term thinking shows up there too. Built for the warranty, not for the long haul. A lot of new cars are excellent in the early years. They start easily, run quietly, return decent fuel economy, and feel refined enough to make buyers happy. For the first owner, especially someone leasing or trading every few years, that may be enough. But many people don't judge a vehicle that way. They judge it by what happens later, when the miles climb, the warranty fades away, and normal aging begins to expose what the car is really made of. That is where the conversation changes. Many modern vehicles do not fail in one giant dramatic moment. They wear in a discouraging way. A plastic thermostat housing begins leaking. A water pump is buried in a place that turns a modest job into an expensive one. A tiny oil leak appears, but reaching the seal means hours of labor because the engine bay is packed so tightly. An electric component that should have been a small replacement is built into a larger unit, so now the whole assembly has to be changed. Some engines make great power from a small size, but they do it by working harder, running hotter, and depending more on perfect oil service. Some transmissions feel smooth when new, but become less graceful once the mileage builds. Some cooling systems rely on plastic pieces that live next to heat year after year and eventually crack in ways owners of older cars did not expect. Even the language used to sell these designs can be misleading. Lifetime fluid sounds reassuring. Sealed unit sounds advanced. Maintenance-free sounds convenient. But that usually means convenient for the seller first, not necessarily for the owner who wants to keep the car for 12 years. That is why people talk about cars being built for the warranty period. They are not saying engineers forgot how to build a vehicle. They are saying the target moved. Instead of asking, will this still feel solid and sensible at 150,000 miles, too many vehicles seem built around a different question. Will this stay acceptable long enough to sell well, lease well, and keep major trouble low during the first ownership cycle? Those are not the same thing. And once you understand that shift, a lot of the new car disappointment begins to make sense. Because when long-term durability stops being the center of the design, complexity steps in to fill the space. That is where modern cars really begin losing people, not only because they age differently, but because they now ask the owner to live with far more systems than most people ever wanted in the first place. And the frustrating part is, more drivers are starting to notice it, so like the video and comment with what annoys you most. Complexity is replacing quality. Some new technology is useful. Better crash protection matters, blind spot warning can help, a good backup camera helps a lot of people, better headlights are worth having. The problem is not technology itself. The problem is that too many vehicles now confuse added complexity with progress, and those are not the same thing. Every extra system brings more wiring, more software, more sensors, more modules, and more chances for one little issue to trigger 3 other problems. A car can still drive well and yet become mentally exhausting because too much of the ownership experience now depends on electronics doing exactly what they are supposed to do every single day. When that works, people praise the car as advanced. When it stops working, they start wondering why basic tasks ever needed to be tied into so many layers. Look at how many simple controls are now buried in screens. Climate controls used to be easy. Turn a knob, push a button, move on. Now on some cars, you tap a screen, open a menu, slide a control, and hope the system responds fast enough. Heated seats, drive modes, radio settings, safety settings, and even glove-friendly tasks that used to take 1 second now demand more attention than they should. That is not an upgrade for many drivers. That is extra work dressed up as innovation.
Then there are the features that sound fancy but solve very little. Touch-sensitive controls that work worse than real buttons. Electronic door handles that become a problem when they fail or freeze. Complicated parking sensors and cameras that are helpful until one small bump throws everything out of line. Automatic systems for tasks that nobody found difficult before. A power tailgate is nice until the motor fails. A panoramic roof looks wonderful until it rattles, leaks, or adds repair costs that does not match the value it gave you. This is why so many owners say the car is not junk because of one huge breakdown. It feels like junk because it becomes tiring. Little things stop cooperating. The screen lags. The warning light comes and goes. A sensor decides something is wrong when nothing feels wrong. The owner spends time resetting, checking, waiting, and paying, and eventually starts asking a simple question. Why is a car this complicated if it still cannot do the basics without drama? A simpler car gives up some tricks, yes, but it often gives back something more useful. Calm, fewer distractions, fewer systems to fail, fewer moments where a minor electronic fault makes the whole vehicle feel silly. And once that complexity is paired with materials that do not age well, the problem gets harder to ignore because now the owner can feel the cheapness every single day, not only when a light comes on. The cheap feeling you notice every day. This is where the disappointment becomes personal. Not under the hood, not on a spec sheet. Right in the cabin, where you spend your time and build your opinion of the car without even thinking about it. You hear it, touch it, lean on it, and live with it. That is where a lot of modern vehicles start losing the argument. A new interior can look beautiful in a video or on a dealer floor. Large screen, thin vents, ambient lighting, layered dash, contrast stitching, maybe a glass roof. It checks every modern box, but living with a car is different from staring at it under bright showroom lights. After enough time, the weaknesses start coming forward. The shiny trim around the cup holders scratches quickly. The soft-looking seat material wrinkles earlier than it should. The lower door plastics feel hard and hollow. The panel beside the display starts making a small but constant buzz over rough roads. Again, nothing dramatic, but enough small disappointments can change the way a car feels. And it's not just the materials, it's the way those materials age. Older cars were not always beautiful inside, but many of them wore their years better. The dashboard may have been plain, but it often stayed together. The buttons may have looked simple, but they worked the same way year after year. Today, some interiors look richer at the beginning and feel older by the middle. That's what annoys owners. They're not only seeing wear, they're seeing premature wear in parts they touch every day. Paint also enters the conversation here. Many owners believe modern paint chips more easily and feels thinner than it used to. Exterior trim fades, gloss black trim marks up. Interior coatings wear off buttons and switches. Steering wheel leather sometimes goes shiny too quickly. None of these things make the car undrivable, but they send a message. They tell the owner the vehicle was not given the kind of margin that once made people feel proud to keep a car for a very long time.
That is why the cabin matters so much. It is the relationship. A car may be reliable on paper and still feel disappointing if the place you sit every day feels flimsy. Once that feeling sets in, owners begin questioning everything else. If the parts I can see and touch already feel this cheap, what about the expensive parts I cannot see? That is when suspicion turns into frustration. And once something small breaks, that frustration often turns into anger, because the repair side of this story is where modern ownership can really go off the rails. Small problems now cost big money. Most drivers can accept that cars need repairs. What is much harder to accept is when a modest problem becomes a painful bill because the part is complicated, the labor is excessive, or the whole system has been designed in a way that makes a small fault feel absurdly expensive. That is one of the biggest reasons people say quality has dropped. Think about a headlight. On many older vehicles, that usually meant a bulb. Now, on some models, it can mean a full assembly loaded with expensive hardware. Think about a bumper. It used to be mostly a body part. Now, it may carry sensors, cameras, brackets, and wiring that all have to go back together correctly. Think about a side mirror. It may now include heating, blind spot sensors, cameras, memory functions, or folding motors. Think about a battery. On some vehicles, it is no longer just a battery swap and done. The car wants to know about it. The system expects it. A simple job becomes a shop job. The labor can be just as frustrating as the part prices. Modern engine bays are often packed so tightly that ordinary repairs take far longer than buyers would expect. A leak that sounds small can require major access work. Replacing something basic may involve moving surrounding components or working around systems that simply were not laid out with long-term service in mind. So even when the failed part is not terribly expensive, the bill still climbs because reaching it takes time. That is how owners end up feeling punished by small problems. A parking lot tap becomes a big estimate. A battery becomes a programming visit. A door handle becomes an assembly. A sensor becomes diagnosis time, reset time, labor time, and often another return visit if the first answer was not right. The car may not be dead, but it starts acting like a machine that was never meant to be simple to own once it left the showroom. That is where the word junk starts entering people's vocabulary. Not always because the vehicle is worthless, but because ownership feels unforgiving. A decent car can still leave a bad taste if every little issue comes with too much cost, too much trouble, and too little common sense. Once enough drivers go through that, they stop blaming bad luck and start blaming the whole direction of the industry. And honestly, that is where the discussion needs to go next, because this did not happen by accident. It reflects what modern cars are really being built to do, built to sell, not to stay good. This is the larger truth hiding behind all the small frustrations. A lot of modern cars do not feel designed first for the person who wants to keep the vehicle for 12 years and drive it well past 100,000 miles. They feel designed first for the sale, the lease, the first impression, the review, the options sheet, and the monthly payment. Once you see that, everything else starts making more sense. If the goal is to win buyers quickly, then flashy dashboards matter, big screens matter, fancy lighting matters, strong acceleration from a small engine matters, a quiet first drive matters, long feature lists matter. These things are easy to market. They show well in advertisements. They help a car stand out in a comparison test. They make buyers feel like they're getting something modern and advanced.
But the things that help a car stay good are different. Repair access matters, strong materials matter, real buttons matter, proven engines matter, simpler trims matter, lower long-term repair cost matters. Those things are harder to sell emotionally because they do not sparkle on day one. They reveal their value slowly over years, and that is exactly why too many manufacturers do not make them the star of the show. That does not mean every new car is bad. It does mean the priorities have changed. Buyers are reacting to that change whether they can explain it clearly or not. They feel that the vehicle was designed to attract them, not necessarily to reward them 10 years later. That is why older cars often feel more honest to people. Not perfect, not always better in fuel economy or safety, but honest. The controls usually made sense. The parts often felt sturdier. The machine felt like a machine instead of a rolling technology package full of features nobody asked for twice.
To be fair, there are still good new vehicles out there. Some modern powertrains are solid. Some brands still care about long-term reputation. Safety has improved. Comfort has improved. But a buyer cannot afford to assume quality anymore. That assumption is what gets people burned. The smart move now is to shop differently, with a sharper eye and a little less faith in badges, brochures, and first impressions. How to buy smarter now? If cars have changed, the buyer has to change too. That is the useful lesson here. You cannot shop the way people once did. You cannot assume new means better, expensive means durable, or premium means well-built. You have to slow down and look for the things that still matter when the vehicle is no longer exciting. Start with proven designs. A model that has been around for a while is often safer than a fresh redesign packed with new systems. A powertrain with a long record is often smarter than something brand new that only looks great on paper. Let somebody else be the unpaid test driver if a vehicle is full of first-year changes. Be careful with trim levels. More features do not always mean more value. Sometimes the sweet spot is the middle trim, where you still get comfort and convenience without piling on every possible electronic extra. Ask yourself what you really need. Good visibility matters. Comfortable seats matter. Easy controls matter. A dependable engine matters. Heating and cooling that work well matter. Strong materials matter. A giant screen and 5 more automated features may not. Listen to long-term owners, not only early reviewers. A brand new review tells you how a car feels when everything is fresh. That's useful, but it's not enough. What matters just as much is what owners say after years of living with the vehicle. Does the interior hold together? Do the electronics stay calm? Does the transmission age well? Are the repairs reasonable? Does the paint hold up? Those answers tell you far more about quality than a polished launch video ever will. Talk to independent mechanics if you can. They see what comes back, what holds up, and what turns into repeat trouble. They know which engines they trust, which transmissions make them nervous, and which brands hide simple parts behind too much labor. Their view is usually far closer to reality than an advertisement.
If you are shopping used, surface history matters more than ever. A modern car that was carefully maintained can still be excellent. A neglected one can become a money pit much faster than an older, simpler car might have. If you are shopping new, think beyond the warranty. Ask not only how the car feels now, but how it is likely to feel at 90,000 miles, when the shine is gone and the bills are yours. That is the real shift. Not panic, not bitterness, and not blind worship of old metal, just a clearer way of judging what quality means now. If you shop that way, you still have a chance to end up with something you'll be happy to keep, not something you will be desperate to unload. Modern cars are not junk simply because they are modern. They become junk when higher prices hide weaker materials, when added technology replaces common sense, and when the whole vehicle is built more for selling than for lasting. That is why so many people feel disappointed now. They're not imagining it. They are reacting to a real change in priorities. The good news is you can still avoid a lot of that pain if you shop carefully, keep your standards high, and stop assuming newer automatically means better. Look past the badge, past the screen, and past the first impression. Pay attention to simplicity, durability, repair cost, service history, and long-term reputation. Because in this market, the smartest buyer is not the one chasing the newest thing. It is the one who still knows the difference between quality and marketing. If this video hit home, make sure to like it and subscribe, because there's a lot more happening in today's car market than most buyers realize until it's already too late. And when you're done here, check out the last video on the vehicles dealers are struggling to move right now, because it ties directly into everything we talked about today and shows just how much trouble is building behind the scenes.